Hey everyone, welcome to Hardscape. Today we're going to be aquascaping this 20-gallon rimless tank for my Betta. Let's get to the fun part. We can talk as we build. I'm going to start by adding a decent amount of aqua soil in the back area, making sure to slope it higher in the back to achieve a sense of depth. Try and give it at least a few inches of depth to allow the plants to be able to root deep enough. It also makes planting a lot easier later. You might be thinking, wow, 20 gallons is pretty big for a Betta. And that may be. I had this tank set up previously and had a huge algae problem, so I decided to take it all down and start all over. So why a Betta? Well, this tank is sitting in the middle of my living room, and it's going to be enjoyed by my family. My wife and son love Bettas, and they're easily one of my favorite fish, so why not set up the ultimate Betta paradise? With this stuff you can really add as much as you want, but I'm going to be capping most of it with a layer of decorative sand just to give it a more natural look. Because this sand was already used and it's already pretty wet, it's going to clump quite a bit, and that's okay. It just makes it a little bit more difficult to spread evenly, but it's definitely doable. And if you wanted to, you can always lay out your wet sand on a baking sheet in the sun, or you could stick it in the oven to dry it out. But it's already cycled, so I really want to keep all that beneficial bacteria if I can. Try to slope the sand towards the back of the tank. It helps achieve a sense of depth. Otherwise, when it's filled with water, the water has a magnifying effect that makes the back of the tank look a lot closer than it really is. Like I mentioned, I had this tank set up earlier, so I'm going to be reusing some materials. I'm also going to be using new ones, and this is by far the cheapest way to re-scape a tank. Next, I'm going to be adding the Hardscape, which in this case is some rounded cereal stone, which is pretty awesome and it's hard to find, but I think it's a really cool look and it's way different from the standard cereal stone. I'm also going to be using some spider wood. When placing my Hardscape, I'm trying to get a feel for how things would naturally come together. One of the things that really helps when setting up your Hardscape is to have a vision or a story in mind. However, it also helps to be open to letting the materials fall the way they feel most natural. Sometimes nature has its own design, so be open to that, and sometimes that's the best. My vision for this scape was to have a large piece of wood that looked like it was tangled around the rocks, as if these rocks were placed there over time, and the flow of the river and the roots found their way around them, like it's been there for a while. I often like to add small pebbles and gravel around the larger stones. It helps break up the line from the sand and the stone, and it makes everything look a lot more complete and more natural. And when placing them, again, think of how the flow might push certain pebbles into crevices, or coarser gravel might get stuck in between rocks, or even left undisturbed because a larger stone is blocking the flow from it. Also, it's important to note that if you plan on placing plants around the edges or in the nooks of some of the stones, leave space for them now, or you may have to adjust them later. I decided to add another piece of spider wood to help balance the hardscape. When it comes to aquascaping, having as much hardscape material as you can have on hand definitely helps, and you may not use it all, but that's okay. More often than not, there's always a piece that either looked great in your head but doesn't work in the scape, or sometimes it just feels like something's missing. I often like to add gravel around the larger stones. It helps break up the line, and it makes everything look a lot more natural. Do what feels natural to you. After all, it's for you anyway. Well, and the fish, of course. Sometimes it's nice to add several gradations of gravel sizes. It helps add to the natural look of the scape. It also adds more character and interest to the overall scape. Now it's time for planting, which in a planted aquascape, it's the most important part. So if you're on a budget, I would allocate most of your budget to the plants. And make sure you get the best possible plants you can afford. For me, I have a very limited selection at my local fish store, so I choose to buy online. I like to prepare my plants ahead of time. It makes planting easier and a lot quicker. Typically, I like to start planting from the back and work my way forward, filling in spaces as I go along. In the background, I'm going to be using some taller crypts. I'm not a plant expert, so I may butcher the names. But the first plant is going to be Crypt Balance, and along with that, I'm going to be using Crypt Retrospiralis, which is slightly smaller. Buying plants online can be scary, but my favorite place to buy plants online is Buce Plants. They by far have the widest selection and have always been super helpful and reliable. In fact, all the plants in this build are from my friends over at Buce, with the exception of a few of the ones from my previous scape. Throughout the rest of the tank, I'm going to be planting Crypt Wenti. I like to use my fingers with this plant, as often I have the problem of the rhizomes being too thick to use planting tweezers. But use whatever tools make it easier for you, and that may be different for everyone. I wanted the scape to be simple and easy to maintain, so I went with low-tech, easy and beginner-friendly plants like Java Fern and Crypts. I think it's safe to say that Crypts are my all-time favorite plant, and I use them in most of my scapes, along with Java Fern. My new favorite might be Buce Philandra though. It's from the same area that the Crypts are from, and I think that's pretty cool. It adds a more natural feel to the scape. Along with the crypts, I'm going to be using Java Fern, which is an epiphyte. So make sure not to bury the rhizome. In fact, they grow best attached to Hardscape. That way they can get the proper water flow around the roots. In fact, if you bury them, they often melt away, and no one wants that. You can just wedge them into place, or you can glue them with a cyanoacrylate super glue. It's fish safe, and it dries really quickly. I'm also adding some stem plants in the back to help add some texture. This plant is Rotala rotundifolia green. It does seem to do pretty well under low-tech conditions. However, it probably won't grow as fast or compact as it would in a high-tech tank. When placing plants, keep in mind that they will grow in, so try to envision how that might look in your arrangement. Lastly, I'm going to be adding some moss around the hardscape. Again, try and keep in mind what looks more natural. I might also add that when it comes to Buce and Crypts, when introducing them to a new scape, they'll often melt, and this is normal and to be expected in some cases. Again, it's perfectly normal, just make sure to remove any melting leaves so as not to foul the water quality. They'll grow back and be looking great in no time at all. They're fairly easy plants, however they are a bit sensitive to changes, so it's best to leave them alone and they'll regulate on their own. Now that the planting's complete, it's time to fill up the tank. I added a few fish from my previous scape. There's a few dwarf Hasbrosus cories and a couple of autosynclus cats. I also added some really cool red root floaters, which will fill in over time, and they'll provide shade and a sense of security to our new Betta. Speaking of which, I think it's time we add him. This is my new Betta. I saw him at the local fish store and I just had to have him. I don't have a name for him yet, but if you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments below. I really think he's gonna love this scape. I mean, I sure do. Alright everyone, thanks for watching, and hopefully I could entertain and even educate you a bit on how to set up a low-tech betta tank. A few things before you go. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I assure you, there are many videos to come. And if you like the plants and you want to check out where I got them from, I have a link in my description below. So go ahead and check out buceplants.com. And in my opinion, they have the best plants online. Alright everyone, thanks for watching. Have a great day.